I don't know how I feel about this daylight savings thing. We're just going to clean the slate with this right now. Let's get this off the table. Why can't we just keep the clocks all year round? It's like I have to wait until spring now to catch up. I mean, I'm going to complain about this for a year now, and then the spring comes and we're losing our sleep. Everybody doing good, though? Yeah, my little guy's doing good down here. Fantastic. Fantastic. I think oftentimes we try to find acceptance, friends, belonging in the weirdest places. We try to find it through social media, right? Isn't that like the one place where everybody seems to go to try to find acceptance? I have one person, God bless you, she's shaking her head saying, absolutely not. We found her. She's the one. She's the only one. God bless you. But we do that so often. We post pictures and we look for acceptance from people we don't even know. Isn't that the truth? A lot of these people we haven't even met. I have a couple of friends from Malaysia. I've never been to Malaysia. How do I? But they send me a friend request. They look like nice people. So I accepted. Yeah, we're going to get together over the summer, Why not? But we go to these social media areas and we try to find acceptance and belonging. And a lot of times, that's the gauge for the day. If we had a lot of likes on a picture or a post from last night, we're going to have a good day. But if we didn't, somebody's going to pay for it. But we try to find acceptance and belonging and love in places that just don't have it. These friends, you know what? In a lot of instances, not all, but in a lot of instances, are they true friends? Are they someone you can count on in trouble? No. I mean, that phone call to Malaysia is expensive. So would I make that phone call if I needed some advice or some help? I probably wouldn't. But we try to find acceptance in love and belonging in places that are artificial. They're man-made. But we have a God who said, I will never leave you or forsake you. Never. Why isn't that the first place we run to? Why isn't that the first place we seek for love, for friendship? Because isn't Jesus all of that? Right? He's like one-stop shopping. He's got everything you need in one place. Yep. And we go to all these artificial places, don't we, Mark? To try to find what he has, and it's pure. You do one wrong thing on social media, and you've got 50 people unfriending you and walking away. But Jesus says, I'll never leave you. I won't forsake you. But why don't we go there? Why don't we search that out? Why isn't that the first place we go when we have trouble, when we need somebody to talk to. He's a really good listener. But he said in the Bible, it's a minimum of 35 times between the Old Testament and New Testament where he says that very thing. I will never leave you or forsake you. He says it in one iteration or another. So it must be important, must be something that he's trying to drive home, wants us to understand this. Now, I won't go through all 35 verses this morning, but just some examples. In Deuteronomy 31, verse 8, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. See, what I love in this, the Lord himself goes before you. Before you. So he's already creating a path for you to walk on. You realize that? He's called the way. So he's making a way for you. So this is like a 2-for-1 deal. Because he says, I'll go before you, but I won't leave you. So you get like the best of both worlds. It's a 2-for-1 deal that is definitely not worth passing up, I'll tell you that. So he goes before you and smooths the way. But he says he won't leave you. Don't be discouraged. Do not be afraid. Do you realize that we could live each day and not be afraid? Do you realize that that's possible? Do you realize that? It says it. That's God's word. It's not my notes. It is possible for us every day to live without fear. Because God didn't give us a spirit of fear. Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So again, he talks about not being afraid. Don't be discouraged. I'm with you everywhere you go. Doesn't that sound powerful? Doesn't that sound like if we embrace that and we understand that, how amazing each day truly is? That's how we get to walk every single day. He tells us, don't be discouraged. Don't be afraid. Hebrews 13:5. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Say with me, he will never leave me. Say it again, he will never leave me. He will not forsake me. There's truth and power in that. Do you believe that? Yeah. Those are things we really need to understand. We need to believe. So we know that God said that he won't leave us. He won't forsake us. And my first, when I was younger, boy, I love water. When I was younger, I always viewed God as such a distant thing in my life. And that's what it was when I was young. God to me was up on the clouds, big gray beard, just driving the cloud around, waiting for me to mess up so that he could correct me for all I do that's wrong. That's what I believed. that's what I believe. Some people teach that. But that's what I thought when I was younger. And then I realized that when I got older, that he's really not up on, believe it or not, he's really not up on the clouds, guys. I hate to disappoint you. Riding it around, just waiting for us to mess up. Man, he loves us. He loves us so much. But I realized as I got older and my relationship matured with him that he's with me. So it's not that he's something that's so far away that I can't grasp. He's here with me, right? He's with you every day. But then as my relationship matured even further with him, and I read John 14, verse 23, Jesus says, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. So I want to read that again because I'm not sure that got all the way in. That one needs to get all the way in. Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home in them. So where is Jesus and the Father? Where is he? He's inside. He's decided to make his home in you. So it started as something that was distant, that was out of my reach, to something that then I knew it was around me. But then I came to learn that he's in me. Jesus' own words were, my Father will love them, and we will come and make our home in them. Let that sink in. That's who we're walking with every day. And I can picture Jesus. He's walking with the realtor. You know there were realtors back then. There's always been realtors. So he's walking with the realtor. He's looking for a place to live. And then Jesus sees me. And he looks at the realtor and says, I want to buy that. And then the realtor looks at me and she's like, are you serious, Jesus? Are you sure that's what you want? You know, there are a lot nicer places to live on the other side of town. But Jesus looked back at me and said, no, I want to live there. You don't see what I see. Wait till I get done. Whew. Wait till I get done. Then you'll see how beautiful that home is. He chose you. He chose you. He longs to live in you and be part of your life every day. So amazing. I really think that realtor thing happened. I swear it did. And it did happen. It did happen to every single one of you that obey his teachings and say yes to him. He says yes to you. And he wants to come live in you. So I'm going to go over a story It was one of the first stories that I came to in the Bible that I absolutely loved, and I'm really just curious how this is going to go. Come here, buddy. You got it. Let's stick that right in here. Good job, my little roadie. Thanks, buddy. So there was a story that I came to when I first came to Christ. It's in Daniel 3. Mark that down. Put a little note in your phone. Daniel 3. It's a great, great story. It's about King Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar, he really liked himself. And he built the statue of himself that was 90 feet high. It was 9 feet wide. And he wanted everybody to worship the statue of him. So he summoned all the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, just everybody, all the higher-ups, all the so-called important people, right? He invited them over and said, look, at the sound of music, so they're going to play some instruments. He said, I want everybody to bow down and worship my statue. And he said, I want you to go out and tell everybody in the land that when they hear the music, they need to bow down and they need to worship me. So soon after he made that declaration, he had all these administrators come to him. All the higher-ups came to him and said, look, you know, King, this is going pretty well, but we got 3 people who are not bowing down to your statue. And this infuriated the king. He said, I want you to bring these 3 guys to me. I want to know who they are. He was furious. How could there be 3 people that aren't worshiping my statue? So he had Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Thankfully, we changed names. We don't use some of these names would just be uncomfortable today. They would be. But he summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they were brought before the king. And King Nebuchadnezzar said, is it true that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? So the king said to them, now when you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, and all kinds of music, if you are all ready to fall down and worship the image I made, we can forget about this. Oh, I'm going to let it go. So he's trying to give them a chance here to save face. He said, but if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God would be able to rescue you from my hand? Ooh. So here he is mocking God. So who's going to save you if I throw you in the furnace? How good is your God? That's what he's saying to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now think about this. Are they going to stay rooted in their faith and in their belief to their God? Or are they going to change what they think and what they know to be true to serve someone else? So in the face of danger, in the face of adversity, What are they going to do? What do we do? Amen. Worship God. My little prophet over here. So, we worship God. That's what we're supposed to do, is that even in the face of adversity and trials, are we faithful to Him as He's faithful to us? So let's see how this goes. He's given them a chance to bow down. But here's their reply. King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. I love that. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. And He will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if He doesn't, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. Talk about faith. Facing sure death. Sure death. They're saying, it doesn't matter. The God we serve is going to deliver us. The God we serve is going to save us. But even if He doesn't, we're not changing. Are we that rooted when troubles come our way? Because that's what the fire is representing in the story, the furnace that they're being threatened to be thrown into. Those are the trials and tribulations that we face, in a sense, every day. Who am I in the face of adversity? I remember reading this story and doing such a self-check on me and saying, am I this rooted and grounded? Is my faith this strong in my God that it doesn't matter what comes against me, who comes against me, what happens today? I'm going to look like Jesus no matter what, and I'm going to shine? So let's see what happens. Because then it says, Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them in the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. Let me read that one more time. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, and they were bound and thrown into the furnace. I get the sense these materials probably aren't fire retardant. They've been walking around, they're dry, they're dusty. I mean, I think if you walk by them too fast and create a spark, that their clothes are going to burn, right? Let's think about that image. So these massive soldiers came and they tied up Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. King Nebuchadnezzar had this furnace pumping hot, 7 times hotter. It was roaring so much that the ground was shaking. This furnace to kill these 3 men because they wouldn't bow down and worship King Nebuchadnezzar. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the furnace. So think about that. These big, strong men carrying up the 3 guys with their very flammable clothing. They opened the door. Whew. It's so hot that the fire from inside the furnace killed the soldiers. And the 3 guys fall into the furnace. So that didn't really go as planned, I would say. It just didn't happen the way he wanted it to happen. But I love this in verse 24. Okay, this is Daniel 3. It's verse 24. It says, Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that were tied up and thrown in the fire? They replied, Certainly, your majesty. He said, Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound, and the 4th looks like the Son of God. What they were tied with was broken. And they're walking around with Jesus in the fire. It's funny that what was tied around them to hold them and bind them was removed in an instant, and they're walking around with Jesus in the fire. And you know what I love about this story? The more I read this, is Jesus was in the fire with them. Jesus could have waved his hand, did the I dream a genie blink, whatever it is. He could have done that and made the fire go out. It says they're walking around in the fire. Jesus could have walked in and just put the fire out. But he didn't. Why? Because it's not about the fire. It's not about your troubles. It's not about your circumstances. It's not about the job that's not going well. It's not about the situation at home that's not going well. It's about Jesus. It's about Jesus. Every day, all the time, every circumstance, it never changes. It never changes. If Jesus put the fire out, he's giving too much credit to the problem. Why focus on the problem when you have a solution? The solution's Jesus. It wasn't about the fire. He's walking around having a conversation with the guys, probably thinking, hey guys, this has been a rough day. You're walking around in your robe and, but we're going to get you out of here. Do you understand the subtlety in that, the importance in that? He didn't put the fire out. The focus isn't on the fire. The focus isn't on the trouble. It's who are you bringing into the fire with you? Who are you walking with when you have trouble? Do we go back and respond in an earthly way? Or do we believe that our Savior is walking with us every day and He has a better plan for your life than you can possibly imagine? So Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out. Listen to what happened there. It wasn't 4 verses ahead of that. And I'm trying to find it through my tears right now, and I can't even see anything on my page. Nebuchadnezzar said, what God is going to save you? He was mocking their God. He was mocking their God. This is what he says. This is what he says. After seeing 4 people walking around in the furnace, Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. And the satraps, prefects, governors, all the royal advisors, everybody crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair on their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched. And this is my favorite one. And there was no smell of fire on them. There was no smell of smoke, meaning there was no sign at all of the trouble they were just in. That's what our walk is supposed to be like with Jesus and as Christians every day. Of course we have trouble. Of course we have trouble. But if we're walking with Jesus, it's possible, right? That there's no smell of smoke. There's no sign of it. There's no smell of smoke. There was no sign at all of what they had just endured and what they just went through. Those clothes that should have burned in a matter of seconds didn't catch fire. The hairs on their head weren't even singed. There wasn't a trace of adversity on them. And they were just walking with Jesus in a blazing furnace. And they had the king of Babylon, who was mocking their God, now calling that very same God the Most High God. That's what staying true to what we believe in all circumstances does. It leads people to the only true person who can save you. What if they had bowed down? When King Nebuchadnezzar, what if they had succumbed to that pressure and said, I'm sorry, I am not walking through that fire. I love God, but I don't think he's that good. He's not going to show up. I just know it. I know it. And that's what we do. We get to the edge of adversity. then we say, you know what? I am going to take the long way around. I'm going to take the long way around. You're standing on the edge of freedom. And instead of taking that one step that's life-changing, we get nervous and we take the other way around. And it's the long way around. Sometimes we've got to walk through the fire. And we've got to trust that our God is there. We need to trust His word. We need to believe His word because it's the truth that sets us free. In verse 28, then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent His angel and rescued His servants. They trusted in Him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own." Sounds like a king has had a change of his ways, a change of his heart, doesn't it? Because of 3 men. Thank you, Jesus. King Nebuchadnezzar continues in verse 29. "Therefore I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble." And listen how he ends the sentence. Now, this is a guy, a reminder, this is someone who was mocking God. Not 10 verses before this said, this God is not going to save you. Who can save you from this? But listen to how he ends this. "For no other God can save in this way." No other God can save in this way. This is a king who wanted nothing to do with God. But Jesus showed up in the fire. You had 3 guys who stayed rooted and connected to their God. Because they did that, they changed a king, changed a kingdom. 3 people. 3 people. What are we doing? Is that who we are? Do we walk like that? Are we one of those 3 at work? Are we one of those 3 in a restaurant? Do we have this kind of faith and love for our God? Nebuchadnezzar said, there is no other God that saves this way. But we look for all other ways to be saved, ways to be loved, ways to be appreciated, ways to be delivered from our trouble. Nobody, nothing, no one saves like this. I would say that's someone worth hitching your trailer up to and walking with Him every day. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So look at the rise and fall. You saw the fall of an idol, a gold idol, massive statue that was built by Nebuchadnezzar. You saw all the eyes on this kingdom. They were all told to worship this idol. but because 3 men held firm in truth in the face of death. They changed a whole kingdom. You know, he said to us that he will never leave us nor forsake us. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Then we need to walk like this. You know, it's a humble confidence is kind of how I describe it. It's confident that it's Christ in you, the hope of glory. But we're humble. It's not a cockiness that we walk around with. But it is truly understanding that your light shines everywhere you go. That your light shines everywhere you go. That your light shines everywhere you go. You understand that? And that you can walk in this every day. Change your family, change your co-workers, change your life. People are going to come against you. Sometimes our own mind comes against us. And we say, you know, I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ready to give my life to Jesus. I have some areas over here that I need to clean up before I give myself to Jesus. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. But I promise you, He's waiting to move in. As we talked about, the Father and Son move in, and He doesn't say, hey, you know what, clean up your act. I'm going to be back through here in about 3 weeks, and let me leave you my card. And when I come back through, if you've cleaned up these areas of your life, I'll pick you up and you can follow me. That's right. Jesus is the one who does the cleaning. So when He moves in your house, when He moves in, Jesus grabs a broom and He just starts sweeping your house. And He's getting everything clean. And He's probably singing as He's in there cleaning. You're a good, good Father. Everybody likes to sing when they clean. I know I do. But that's what Jesus is doing in your body, in your life. We're so concerned about taking things out of our life that we think aren't pleasing to Him. And all He's saying is, let me in. I'm going to take things out of you my way, my order, in His order. We might be thinking, gosh, man, I really need to stop this. Maybe we're addicted to certain things. It doesn't even matter what it is. And we think, well, if I can just stop doing this, then I can go here. And Jesus is just saying, no, just accept me, love me. I'm going to take things out, and it might not be the way you and I think it has to go. It's trusting in Him. Let Him take those things out of your life. Let Jesus get in your house and sweep, and don't worry about anything else but being loved by the Most High God every day of your life. It's so amazing. You know, guys, everything we do in life is a process. Everything. You can't brush your teeth if you don't get your toothbrush, if you don't take the cap off the toothpaste, if you don't squeeze it on the tube. I can go on and on. Making a cup of coffee, you got to put the filter in. You got to put the coffee grounds in. You hopefully put your cup underneath. I have not done that once or twice in my life, and coffee ends up everywhere. Everything you do is a process. Everything. This is a process too. This is a process too. Be thankful that we're loved by an amazing God. Trust that He's working in areas of your life that you can't even see, and it's happening right now as we speak. It's a process every day, and we just need to submit to that. And we really just need to enjoy, the ride. Accepting Jesus into my life was the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. Anybody else feel that way? Yeah. Accepting Jesus into my life is the most radical thing I've done. I used to think when I was living a completely different lifestyle, and this is being recorded, so I'm not going to say it. Most of you know it anyways. But my life was not the way it is now. The most radical thing I ever did was accept Jesus. In how He has led me, in the situations that He has put me in. It's the most, I always would think, man, Christians, man, it just looks like a boring life, man. Why would you want to do that? I had born-again Christians in my family when I was younger. I would say, why would you want to do that? The most hypocritical. I didn't understand it because they were not at all what I have learned in this church with our pastors about the true gospel, the simple gospel. Everything I learned growing up drove me away from this. So you wonder who that's coming from. Because the enemy wants us to think that it's all about being judged and Christians are hypocritical. This church here changed my life. Allow Him to work in your life. Allow Jesus to work in your life. And it is anything but boring. Praying for people and watching people get healed and being able to bring people to Christ and being a light that shines everywhere you go, that's a pretty exciting thing. Watching people in your family get saved, that's a pretty exciting thing. I never once thought about the stuff I used to do. Not one time. And I know there's somebody in here that she said she did the exact same thing. When I came to Christ, I never one time focused on the ugly things that were going on in my life. I focused on Him. He took things out, things that I thought I would never stop doing. He removed from my life. Just keep your eyes focused on Jesus. Keep your eyes focused on Jesus. Allow Him to work in your life. Be the most radical ride you've ever been on.